Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. And if you are interested in high performance coaching and business coaching and speaking, Faisal Ensaun, coming out of Central Florida today, is the man. And he's got a very fascinating story, and he's translated that into influence and thought leadership. And I'm really happy to have him on to talk about this segment. We get coaches, thought leaders in the audience, and also on guests. So, Faisal, welcome.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, I know you, like I said, a lot of the podcast guests, they come from different backgrounds and different stories, and they harness that to create massive influence. And so, talk about yours, and we'll dive into the questions.
Where do you want me to get started? There are a lot of stories.
Yeah, what got you into coaching?
The short version of it is that I got into coaching mainly, to be honest, I was looking to grow myself in a lot of ways. I was looking for a path where I was consistently growing and learning. I just did not like the mainstream version of a career path either. Even though, of course, there's learning in other things. And I was also seeking my own thing. So without realizing it, I was thinking about going towards entrepreneurship and business. As much as in the beginning, the biggest motivation was I wanted to grow as a person, as a leader, as a human being, as a father, as a husband, and then slowly translated towards building a business that aligns with that effort.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a great segue into what we're going to talk about. Is it's a lot of people, they don't fit in the system and they want to do their own thing, but kind of constraints. But now with the internet and social media, it's a lot easier to go out and become a solopreneur, thought leader, creator. So then, which brings me to my next question is just when this idea for entrepreneurs, and a lot of them get distracted. We've just passed the June 14th, which is National Quitter's Day, but you have the power of your vision and how to leverage it in your personal and professional life.
Yeah. So to your point, it's become a lot more easier to do a lot of things. And I was listening to your last guest who was talking about AI, and AI has done all sorts of other amazing things that was not possible 10 years ago when I was getting started. So the tools are becoming easier. But the problem is that it's becoming more and more difficult for people to move forward because they're getting more and more distracted, overwhelmed by so much information, so many tools, so many ways to do things. More choices for people at a point becomes actually a problem. People think more choices are good to a certain degree, but as soon as you go over that, then it's hard to make decisions because we have so much brain power to make those kind of decisions on a consistent basis. And a lot of my clients who tend to be lawyers, engineers, IT professionals of all kinds, and they've been in their career path for 10 plus years, 20 years, and they want to go towards their own path, create freedom. And a lot of times they jump in, and for example, they will jump into a real estate investing path, they'll pick flipping. And then from there, they will go towards multifamily. From there, they will go towards a short-term rental. Like before, they've built 5 or 6 businesses, and they can't focus on any of them properly. And we know that it requires a lot of work and a lot of consistent effort and learning and team building and systems and processes for you to make one business work, let alone 5 or 6 businesses, which is the rookie mistake of every entrepreneur. You start with a lot of them and you don't go anywhere. So my take is, and I did that too, by the way. So my hand is up. In the beginning, I was trying to do all of it. I was trying to write a book. I was trying to speak. I was trying to coach. I was trying to, and I didn't realize they're lateral businesses. So it looks like they're the same thing, but they're not. They require their own systems and support team around it. So, and the thing that helped me more than anything else was that, okay, what truly matters to me in this process? And what mattered to me was when I looked at long term, was that, you know what, I'm looking for a specific type of life. I'm looking for a specific purpose that I'm going towards. I'm looking for certain values that I'm reenacting. I'm becoming a type of person. What is that specifically? And what is the why behind all of that? And as I went deeper and deeper, I realized, you know what, all these opportunities look amazing, but do they feel aligned with me? When in the beginning I thought there wasn't too many opportunities, I was looking for more. But actually, to be honest, when you're in business for a little bit, you've developed a few skill sets, you start to see there are way too many opportunities. There's no way you can take advantage of even most of them. So what are you going to pick and choose? And what is that going to be based on? And what most people do is they copy other people's path. They watch other people. It's great to be inspired, but then they start to copy other people's, but they don't take into account that their life is so different than yours. And what's important to you is different to them. What's important to you is not important to them. What their motivations are in the background are not yours. So if you don't do the deeper work of finding out what your vision, what your purpose is, and actually build out a strategic plan, then you're asking for distractions. I don't care how many tools you have. I don't care how much AI is. You're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to be consistent.
And I really love that because the previous podcast guest was talking about your ideal client, and I know it sounds very cliche, your ideal client or your client avatar, but it goes when you hone down on who is your 10 client, then all the other extraneous like time wasters. And I know of physicians, they talk about, they're like, oh, real estate is great for physicians, but they never understand why. And then they're like they're losing money as in single family, and they're losing money in short term or syndicate. They don't have a purpose. They're just like floating. So I love this idea of the power of vision and clarity. So which brings us talking about is when you talk about relationships in business, and ultimately business is a people business. So what insights do you have for the audience for leveraging relationships to grow faster in business?
And I would say this is one of the hardest pieces for everybody. And I often say this is that most people who come to work with me or seek me out, they tend to seek me out for like distraction. They're distracted. They don't have a focus. They don't know what they're doing, or they're struggling in business. And then I'll have a first initial conversation. I do usually deep dive with them. And I'd say 95% of the time, it's a relationship problem, whether it's in personal or business. And to be honest, we tend to take our patterns in business and personal life. Like our system doesn't work separate. In one side, we might show up with a persona, but the background intentions, the background subconscious programming, all of it is very similar. So our problems in personal life will show up in business. Business problems will show up in personal life. And here's a challenge. So when you go out in the world of business, it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
And most people are horrible at building long-term relationships. And here's how most people operate. And I say most people, not because I think most people are bad people or they're negative or evil or anything like that. I think we're all trained like that. Like the education system has done a number on everybody when it comes to this stuff, where we tend to look at everything short term. And so there's this quote, I think it was Nassim Taleb, who says that there are two big addictions. It's heroin and monthly salary. And so when you jump into entrepreneurship, most projects you're going to work out, it's not going to be short term. It's going to be long term. It's going to be 3 months, 6 months, years out, investments that are going to pay out 10 years out, 5 years out. And you're going to be working, and it's not going to be a one-to-one relationship where I talk to this person, I'm going to get a payout. And I was actually talking to one of my clients. It didn't click. He's a very successful individual, and now he's going into entrepreneurship path. I think it's a complete waste of time for me to talk to all these people, and he's taught to go network, but he doesn't even doesn't get the point, and he's looking for a one-to-one output. If I talk to 10 people, I should get this much result, and result is measured in terms of money. That's not how necessarily it works. You might talk to 100 people, maybe 10 of them might get you closer to your goal, and maybe one of those is going to really hit that thing. And you're not even connecting with them because I want some business out of you. You're actually building a relationship. You're getting to know the person. You're building a network around you. They might need you at some point. You might need them at some point. And this is a reciprocal relationship. And we're not taught that way to work, other than like within our families. Even that's a little bit broken within nuclear families. But human communities work like that, where it's a lot of reciprocity, but that's disappeared with the commercial world. And then we're all taught to work for, hey, if I work this many hours, I get paid this many hours. That's not how the business world works at all. And that was like my biggest shock. And then most of my days, even to this day, is I'm just meeting people. I don't know why I'm meeting people. Yes, they're in my general niche area. I'm connecting with them. I'm going to events. I'm speaking at events. And I don't know what that was. And this is why usually when I meet people, I don't know whether I can support them or they can support me. I don't offer anything. I'm like, and actually, it's funny. I have this system that I have been testing. It was an automation system on LinkedIn. Now, just randomly meet all these people online. They're professionals. And I can't tell you how many times by the end of the call, it would be like a 30-minute call. Is thank you for not selling anything to me. Because every person they met, they were trying, like, why would I sell something to you? I don't know you and you don't know me. There's no trust relationship. It's like the basic assumptions and perception of how relationships works is so broken that people don't know how to operate. But ultimately, I would say relationships are about long term, and how can you create credibility as a person? Because first of all, you want people to build relationships with you, so where's your credibility there? Because that's going to, that your reputation is going to precede you to begin with. Second, what is the intention you go with there? Most people don't have an intention, so they have very little influence. And then what are the programming, what are the things that you take from your personal life, you're taking to the professional world? And a lot of people think that, oh, I can run away from my problems at home with my spouse, with my kids, for a little bit, but it will catch up. I recently just started working with the head of an organization who avoided being around family and all sorts of stuff for 20 plus years, built a very successful company, but now he wants to exit from the company, start a family, do a lot of things. The same core problems that he used to have with his family and other people, now that's showing up with his core team. He doesn't know how to exit because he doesn't trust anybody. And that's why I'm coming in, okay, how can we make it a team environment where you can trust the core team, so you can start to step away that he doesn't know how to step away because 20 years of his life has been spent just on that. And there's a lot more to relationships, and I take people a lot deeper because our own trauma, our own triggers, our own challenges, our own way of looking at things subconsciously shows up. We don't realize it consciously. We affect people with our energy. So for example, I have a community for coaches that I train coaches. One of the coaches jumped on, he was selling a high ticket program. And as soon as he jumped on the call, it was a small group call. I could sense his energy. He was overwhelmed. It's his first really high ticket program. And he's like, what's going on? What's been a win? He's like, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, what's happening? He's like, hell, I'm about to offer this thing and it's been driving me nuts. I didn't need to ask you anything, but as soon as you jumped on, your energy was pushing me off. More than likely, that's probably gonna happen with the client that you're offering the thing with, because it's all about you, and because he doesn't understand relationships yet, because he wants to get something from that person, but he doesn't realize, even though he wants to serve, but his energy is all about himself. And again, that requires a certain amount of awareness and deeper reflection on how do you approach your relationships? What are the background intentions that are happening without you realizing it? What are your day-to-day habits? What is your bigger intention with relationships and business? And what is the interaction between personal and business that's coming up? Most people are maybe 5 to 10% aware of these things. And it is hard and it's very complex, to be honest. And to be honest, it's also one of the challenging areas of my life that I constantly work on. This is why I work on this area probably more than any other area.
Yeah. I recently finished this book with the Gabby Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back. And she was talking about the same thing. Your thoughts, your vibes you put out, you may not be consciously aware. So, which brings me to my next question is, because ultimately entrepreneurship, I've talked to so many people, it's a personal development and we have our traumas. And so you mentioned traumas and dealing with trauma while on a growth path, and how can it, how you mentioned the entrepreneur who was very successful. He's got trauma, he got problems with his family and his team. So how do you go about healing that trauma?
So at this point, thankfully, and this is the power of relationships. I've built relationships with so many coaches and therapists and other people. There are areas of expertise that I have. I have some training and trauma work, but I also have coaches and therapists that are specialized in that area. So often when I'm working as a coach, as a high performance and leadership coach, I tend to focus on present future a lot more than anything else. But there are times where clients are stuck in the past. And the way when you go through the normal training as a coach, they tell you that, hey, if a client is really stuck in their trauma and their past and they keep bringing it up, you need to recommend therapy. Here's the problem. Most of my clients have gone through like decades of therapy. and they're still dealing. Why? Because the mainstream, again, is stuck with surface level therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, and a lot of the new models of trauma therapy is not introduced as dominantly as it should be, and with all the red tape that's there. So now other practitioners and other people are bringing in new forms of therapy, such as somatic therapy, compassionate inquiry, internal family system. So I started connecting and collaborating with other coaches and therapists around that. So when they get stuck, I actually make it a part of my offer to get them connected. And usually within 4 or 5 sessions, they're able to. Now think about it, a decade of therapy they've gone through, and it has helped. Of course, I'm not going to say that it doesn't help, but it hasn't gotten them out of what they need to get out of. So part of it is that, but part of it is a lot of trauma also affects people because they don't know, and then it connects back to the vision and purpose. They don't know what their path is. You're affected by your past more because you don't know where you're going. And I have trauma right now. Both my wife and I have come from a war-torn country, and like when our parents had to flee there, and lots of families lost, houses lost, the whole lifestyle and the whole culture lost, and you go to the next world, and this is the fourth place we're trying to restart in the world. Now, when you go through a path like that, where your parents are literally in survival mode, your family, culture, pretty much everybody's in survival mode. So it's bound to be that you're going to deal with a lot of crazy stuff internally. And here's the most amazing thing about human beings. If you watch, and there are a lot of people, my story is not unique. There are millions of people who've gone through that stuff around Earth, but human beings are incredibly resilient. They get out of it somehow. They look functional on the surface. It's like functional alcoholics, but deep down, there's a lot of stuff in there. And I deal with it pretty much even to this day. I've done this work for 15 plus years, but to this day, I have to be very aware of it. Otherwise, it can show up. But the thing that helps me, one, is to do the background work. Go back, and whether it requires therapy or EMDR or whatever you need to do, or ayahuasca, deal with the thing. If you are aware of it, deal with it. Or if you're things that are holding you back, you can't see it, get help with that area. That's one side of it. But yeah, and I've seen a lot of people go through a lot of trauma work. The problem is that they don't know where the hell they're going. So then they did the work, but they don't have a clear purpose. Again, they fall into, and this is what the human mind does, we tend to just copy the next person. Oh, this person looks like they have their shit together. So let me just follow this. And we do it subconsciously. We don't realize it. And then we spend about a decade going through our life. And by the way, most successful professionals have done this to death. They will go through a career of 10, 20 years. They build a whole life. And then they will, in the words of Alan Watts, who'd said that they will look back in their 40s, 50s, and it was like, yes, I made it. And then they'll look back with a certain sense of feeling cheated, saying that, you know what, this is it.
Yeah.
That's what I worked the past 10, 20 years for. I don't think this was worth it.
Yeah.
And not because of the process, it wasn't worth it for them to achieve, but it wasn't theirs to achieve. It was probably somebody else's life that they copied. And so when you start to develop a clear vision, which your purpose is wrapped around that, then you develop the resilience and the curiosity to build yourself up. You said entrepreneurship is about personal development. I think life is also about personal development. The problem is that most people don't grow. If you watch a person for 10 years, it's like when you see them after 10 years, they're pretty much similar with some changes that naturally happen, but they've lived 10 years, the same year every year. They haven't changed. But when you actually are on a real journey, and I work with a lot of people, hundreds of people that have been incredible high performers from entrepreneurship, from the professional world, all kinds of leaders, every 3 to 6 months, they develop a different side to themselves. Doesn't mean they completely change, their core remains, but they unearth a different aspect of themselves, and they learn to show up differently. They learn to be better. They learn to question the things that they do. And to be honest, most people can't keep up with them around them. This is why they tend to be leaders. This is why they tend to lead, because they tend to learn a lot faster than most people, because they have a clear purpose, they have a clear vision, they're very focused on that, and they deal with their shit. They don't just look at it. And people deal with it in different ways. Sometimes their mentors might help them. Sometimes they might go to a professional on the therapy side. Sometimes they might hire a coach. Sometimes they're part of a community that supports them. Whatever the medium is, get the support, because you will save decades of your life. Not only that, but you will not pass it on to the next generation, whether that the next generation is your kids or your team members. I can't tell you how many managers and executives I've worked with. They operate a certain way as a leader, and then you would go deeper and ask them, why do you do that? So they don't realize it, but they were copying somebody else's model. A manager, somebody that inspired them, but they were doing some things half-assed. They just they picked up on the model and they're just doing it subconsciously. Do you think that applies to your situation? Exactly. And no, and as a leader, they need to be doing that thinking.
Interesting. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking with you and so much insights and wisdom. If people wanted to reach out to you to inquire about speaking or coaching, how would they follow you and reach out to you?
It would be if you see my full name somewhere underneath, Faisal Ensaun. If you search that on Google or faisalensaun.com, all my social media, everything will be on that, and you can connect with me.
Awesome. I really love that. And I really enjoyed talking with you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.